Elder stood at the edge of the learning pool, his old amphibian skin catching the pale light of the dying red sun. Around him, 12 young sat in the warm water, their large eyes watching him with the patience that defined their species. They had heard many stories from the elder, but tonight he would tell them the most important one. 200 years ago, began, his voice soft like flowing water, our people found a ship drifting in the dark between stars. It was damaged, broken. Inside were 3,000 beings we had never seen before. They called themselves humans. The young ones leaned forward. They knew of humans now. Everyone in the galaxy knew of humans. But back then, humanity was new to the stars, small and weak compared to the great empires that ruled the void. Their ship was called the Horizon, continued. Their life support was failing, their children were sick, their old ones were dying, they had nothing to offer us. No money, no technology, no power, they simply asked for help. He paused, letting the words settle. And we gave it. Our medical ship, the Gentle Current, stayed with them for 40 days. We repaired their vessel, we healed their sick, we saved their lives. What did they give us in return? Asked a young one named. Smiled, the expression strange on his wide face. They tried to give us everything they had. Their captain, a woman named Grace, offered us their food, their fuel, even the jewelry her grandmother had given her. We refused it all. When she asked why we helped them, our captain said something that humans have never forgotten. His voice grew quiet. He said, "Kindness needs no payment." Far away, across 3 star systems, Commander Daniel Shaw sat alone in his quarters aboard the heavy cruiser Relentless. He was 53 years old, with gray at his temples and scars on his hands from battles he tried not to remember. The Terran Collective had given him this ship because he was good at his job. He followed orders. He kept his crew safe. He did not start unnecessary fights. But tonight he could not sleep. Something was wrong. He could feel it in his bones the way old soldiers sometimes can. The communication panel on his desk lit up. Lieutenant Amy Grant's voice came through, tense and controlled. "Commander, we're receiving a distress signal. Priority 1. It's coming from the sanctuary system." Shaw stood quickly. Priority 1 meant lives were in immediate danger. What's the situation? The Dominion, sir. A full invasion fleet, 47 warships. Grant paused. They're attacking space. Shaw walked to the bridge, his boots echoing in the empty corridors. The Dominion was bad news. They were in species that saw conquest as their natural right. They had destroyed dozens of smaller civilizations, taking their worlds and their resources without mercy. The Terran Collective had an uneasy peace with them, maintained only because humanity had shown they could fight back. But they could not fight back. They were peaceful. They had no warships. They had no weapons. They were helpless. On the bridge, Grant handed him a data tablet. "Sir, there's something else. The ship's historical database flagged something about the—" She pointed to a file on the screen. 200 years ago, a medical ship saved a human colony transport. 3,000 lives. Shaw read the file slowly. He read about the Horizon and its desperate journey. He read about the 40 days the spent healing human children and human grandparents. He read the words of the captain, "Kindness needs no payment." He looked up at his crew. They were watching him, waiting. They knew what the orders would be. The Terran Collective had made it clear, do not provoke the Dominion. Do not risk war over species that cannot help us. Stay safe. Stay smart. Stay out of trouble. Shaw thought about those orders. He thought about the young officers around him who had families waiting for them back home. He thought about the 47 Dominion warships and his 1 cruiser. The math was simple. The answer was obvious. "Lieutenant Grant," he said quietly, "put me on shipwide broadcast." She hesitated for only a moment, then pressed the button. "You're on, sir." Shaw's voice filled every corridor, every room, every deck of the Relentless. "All hands, this is the commander. 200 years ago, a species called the found 3,000 of our people dying in the void. They did not know us. They had no reason to help us, but they stopped. They stayed. They saved every single life on that ship. He paused, looking at the stars on the. When our captain asked why they helped, they said something simple. They said that kindness needs no payment. They asked for nothing. They expected nothing. They simply did what was right. Today they are dying. The End Dominion has come to take their world, to destroy their people, to erase them from the galaxy. The Terran Collective says we should not interfere. The Terran Collective says it is not our fight. His voice hardened. But I remember. Humanity remembers. We remember kindness. We remember debts. And we pay what we owe. I am taking this ship to Sanctuary. I am going to stand between the Dominion and the. Anyone who wishes to leave may do so without judgment. The shuttles will be waiting. He looked around the bridge at his officers. Amy Grant, Chief Engineer Cole, Dr. Maria Santos. Every face was still, every eye was steady. But I am going, because 200 years ago they taught us something important. Kindness matters, gratitude matters, and humanity does not forget. He cut the broadcast and waited. In the silence, he could hear his own heartbeat. He had just ended his career. He had just doomed his ship. He had just made a choice that went against every order, every rule, every sensible piece of advice he had ever received. No one moved toward the shuttles. Cole, the old engineer with grease on his hands and gray in his beard, spoke first. "I've kept this ship running for 20 years, sir. I'm not leaving her now." Dr. Santos nodded. "Medical Bay is ready for casualties, Commander." Amy Grant simply looked at him and said, "Setting course for Sanctuary, sir." Shaw felt something warm in his chest, something he had not felt in a long time. Pride, not in himself but in his crew, in his species, in the simple truth that when it mattered most, humans remembered who had been kind to them. "Then let's go pay our debt," he said, all ahead full. The Relentless turned toward the distant stars and jumped into hyperspace, one ship racing to face an army, carrying with it the weight of a promise made 2 centuries before. On Sanctuary, Elder finished his story. The young were quiet, thinking about kindness and strangers and the strange ways the universe worked. Above them, the first Dominion ships appeared in the sky like dark omens. Elder asked, "Do you think anyone will help us?" Looked at the young one with ancient eyes. "I do not know, little one, but I know this: kindness is never wasted. What we give to the universe remembers, and sometimes when we need it most, it comes back to us." He did not know that even now, a single human ship was racing through the void to keep an old promise. He did not know that the words spoken by a captain 200 years ago had echoed through human history, taught in schools and written in books, until they became part of what humanity believed about itself. He did not know that mankind never forgets a favor. But he was about to find out. The Relentless dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sanctuary system, and Commander Daniel Shaw saw what he was facing. 47 Dominion warships hung in the void like a swarm of angry insects, carriers twice the size of his cruiser, destroyers bristling with weapons, fighter craft moving between them like clouds of gnats. It was the largest invasion force Shaw had ever seen. Behind this wall of death sat Sanctuary itself, a small blue-green world orbiting a dying red star. On that world lived 4 million, who had no idea that their fate was being decided in the cold space above them. "Sir," Lieutenant Amy Grant said quietly, "they've seen us." Shaw nodded. Of course they had. One ship could not hide from 47. He had known that before he came. Open a channel to their flagship. The flickered and high warlord N appeared. He was tall and thin, with the hard shell and clicking mandibles of his species. His compound eyes showed no emotion, but his voice carried amusement. "A human ship. One human ship." He made a sound that might have been laughter. "Have you come to watch, little mammal, to see how a superior species deals with the weak?" Shaw stood straight, his hands clasped behind his back. "I have come to inform you that they are under human protection. You will withdraw your fleet from this system immediately." The silence lasted 3 full seconds. Then N laughed again, a harsh clicking sound. Under human protection, you have one ship, Commander, I have 47. The Terran Collective has made no treaties with your government has not declared war. You are alone. His voice dropped lower. Leave now and I will let you live. Stay and you will die with the rest. Shaw looked at the warlord on the screen. He looked at the fleet arrayed against him. He thought about his crew, about their families, about the futures they might never have. Then he thought about 3,000 humans saved by strangers who asked for nothing in return. 200 years ago, Shaw said, his voice carrying across the void, a ship found our people dying. They saved us. They asked for nothing. He paused. Today, we pay what we owe. You may take this world, warlord, but the cost will be more than you can imagine. He cut the transmission before N could respond. Lieutenant Grant broadcast that message on all frequencies. I want every ship in this sector to hear it. I want every listening post in the region to pick it up. He sat down in his command chair. Then take us in. The Relentless surged forward, one ship against an armada. Down in engineering, Chief Cole worked faster than he had worked in years. His hands flew across control panels, rerouting power, strengthening shields, preparing the ship for the punishment it was about to receive. Around him, his team moved in desperate silence. They all knew what was coming. Cole, Shaw's voice came through the speakers. I need everything you've got. The old engineer smiled grimly. You'll get it, sir. This old girl has some fight left in her yet. The first Dominion destroyers moved to intercept. They expected an easy kill. One human cruiser against 3 destroyers was not a fair fight, but Shaw had spent 30 years learning how to win unfair fights. He used the planet's moon for cover, swinging around it at dangerous speed, forcing the destroyers to split their formation. When they came around the moon after him, he was waiting. 2 destroyers took heavy damage from his opening salvo. The third tried to flee and took a torpedo in its engines. 3 ships down, 44 to go. High Warlord N watched from his flagship with growing anger. This was supposed to be easy. They had no defenses. The humans had no reason to interfere. But now his destroyers were burning, and the human ship was diving into an asteroid field where his larger vessels could not follow. Send the fighters, he ordered, flush them out. Hundreds of small Dominion fighters swarmed into the asteroid field. The Relentless was waiting for them too. Shaw had positioned his ship behind a massive rock, using its bulk as a shield while his point defense guns tore through the fighter swarms. When the asteroids shifted, he moved with them, always keeping stone between his ship and the worst of the enemy fire. Hours passed. The Relentless took damage. A lot of damage. Hull breaches appeared on 3 decks. The port weapons array went offline. Dr. Maria Santos worked without rest in the medical bay, treating burns and broken bones and wounds that would have been fatal without her skill. But they kept fighting. On Sanctuary below, Elder watched the lights in the sky. He knew what those lights meant. Ships were fighting up there. Ships were dying. But for hours now, the Dominion had not landed. For hours now, something was holding them back. What is happening? A young asked him. Shook his head slowly. I do not know. But deep in his heart, in a place where hope had almost died, something began to stir. Back in space, Shaw wiped blood from his forehead. A console had exploded near him an hour ago, and the cut kept bleeding. He did not have time to get it treated. Status report, he ordered. Amy Grant's voice was steady, but exhaustion showed in her eyes. Shields at 30%. We've lost the port weapons and forward torpedo tubes. 11 enemy ships destroyed or disabled. She paused. We've been fighting for 8 hours, sir. 11 ships. Shaw allowed himself a moment of pride. One cruiser had destroyed 11 enemy vessels, but there were still 36 left and his ship was falling apart. How long can we hold? He asked. Grant looked at her displays. Maybe 4 hours, maybe less. Shaw nodded. Then we hold for 4 hours. He stood up, ignoring the pain in his side where a piece of metal had cut him. And then we find a way to hold for 4 more. Sub-Warlord stood beside High Warlord N on the flagship, watching the battle unfold. He was younger than his commander, and something about this fight troubled him. "Why do they not flee?" he asked. "They cannot win, they must know they cannot win. Why do they stay and die?" N clicked his mandibles in annoyance. "Because they are foolish. Because humans are emotional creatures who cannot see reason." But was not so sure. He had studied humans. He knew they were capable of great cruelty and great kindness, great cowardice and great courage. A species that would fight like this, against impossible odds for a people who could offer them nothing. That was not foolishness. That was something else. Something the Dominion had never faced before. "Send them a message," suggested. "Offer them surrender, let them go with honor." N turned on him with fury in his compound eyes. "We do not offer surrender to prey. We do not show weakness. We destroy them and we take this world and we move on to the next." He pointed at the damaged human cruiser on the tactical display. "They will break. They always break." But 12 hours later, the Relentless was still fighting. Burning, bleeding, held together by emergency force fields and the will of its crew, but still fighting. Shaw's message had spread across the sector. Other ships were listening. Other species were watching. And somewhere far away, decisions were being made. On the bridge of his dying ship, Commander Shaw received a transmission. It was weak, coming from a long way off, but the words were clear. "Commander Shaw, this is Admiral Price, 3rd Fleet. We are en route. Hold the line." Shaw closed his eyes for just a moment. When he opened them again, he was smiling. "You heard the Admiral," he told his crew. "We hold the line." And they did. 3 star systems away, Admiral Price stood on the bridge of her flagship, the carrier Defiance. She was 60 years old, with silver hair cut short and eyes that had seen too many battles. For 18 hours, she had been watching the reports from Sanctuary. For 18 hours, she had been fighting with herself. Her orders were clear. The Terran Collective Council had been very specific. Do not engage the Dominion. Do not risk war over a species that offers nothing strategic. Let the fall. It was the sensible choice. The safe choice. The choice that kept human lives from being wasted on a hopeless cause. But Shaw's message had spread like fire. Every ship in her fleet had heard it. Every crew member knew the story of the horizon and the rescue. And now, one man with one ship was dying to keep a promise made 2 centuries before. "Admiral," Captain Henry Dawson said quietly, "the crew is getting restless." Price turned to look at him. Dawson was a good man, solid and dependable. His grandfather had been on the Horizon Colony ship. His family owed their existence to the restless. "How?" she asked. "I've had 17 requests for transfer to any ship heading to Sanctuary. 8 officers have asked permission to take shuttles and join the fight on their own. 2 engineering crews tried to modify their jump drives to go faster." Dawson's voice was tight. "They want to go, Admiral. They need to go." Price walked to the viewport and looked out at the stars. Her fleet consisted of 28 warships. Carriers, cruisers, destroyers. Thousands of crew members, each with families waiting for them back home. If she gave the order to go to Sanctuary, she would be throwing away her career. She would be disobeying direct orders from the highest levels of government. She might be starting a war that humanity could not win. But if she did not go, what would that say about humanity? What would it say to the galaxy about who they were? "Open a channel to Fleet Command," she ordered. The connection took only moments. Admiral Harding appeared on the screen, his face stern. "Admiral Price, I assume you're calling to confirm you're maintaining position." Price took a breath. "No, sir. I am calling to inform you that the 3rd Fleet is moving to support Commander Shaw at Sanctuary." Harding's face went red. "You have direct orders, Price. Stand down." "With respect, Admiral, those orders ask me to watch our people die for a debt we owe. Those orders ask me to tell my crews that kindness means nothing and gratitude is a weakness." She stood. "I will not give that order. Court-martial me when this is over if you wish, but I will not let Shaw and his crew die alone while they fight for everything we claim to believe in." She cut the transmission before Harding could respond. Around her, the bridge crew stared. Then slowly they began to smile. "All ships," Price announced, "prepare for jump to Sanctuary system. We go together or we don't go at all." 28 ships powered up their jump drives, but they were not alone. Across human space, Shaw's message had reached billions of people. News channels played it on repeat. The story of the horizon was told again and again. Schools showed their students the old records of the rescue. Grandparents who remembered the old stories told them to their. And people responded. In the Fifth Fleet, 3 captains' orders and broke formation, racing towards Sanctuary. In the outer colonies, a group of retired warships were pulled out of storage and crewed by volunteers. Civilian ships were being modified with weapons by engineers who had served in wars past. Veterans who had not worn a uniform in decades reported for duty. Senator Laura Blake sat in the council chambers on Earth, watching the reports come in. She had voted to stay out of the Sanctuary affair. She had agreed that risking human lives for a small alien species made no strategic sense. But now, watching what was happening, she understood something she had missed. This was not about strategy. This was not about politics. This was about who humanity was going to be. She stood up in the council chamber. "We need to reconsider our position," she said. "Our people are going to Sanctuary whether we approve or not. We can either support them or watch them die without our help. That is the real choice we face." The debate that followed was short. The council had tried to hold back the tide, but some tides cannot be stopped. At Sanctuary, the Relentless was dying. 18 hours of battle had torn the ship apart. Fires burned in sections that had lost atmosphere. Only half the crew remained alive. Commander Shaw commanded from auxiliary control because the main bridge no longer existed. But they were still fighting. Lieutenant Amy Grant brought him the latest damage report. Her uniform was torn and there was a burn on her arm she had not had time to treat. "Sir, we've lost main power, running on emergency batteries. Shields are gone. We have maybe 2 hours before life support fails." Shaw nodded. He had known it would come to this. "And the Dominion?" "Still holding position. They've lost 15 ships trying to take us down." Grant managed a tired smile. "I think we've made them nervous, sir." Shaw was about to respond when the communication panel lit up. The signal was weak, fighting through the interference of battle, but the words were clear. "Commander Shaw, this is Admiral Price. 3rd Fleet inbound. ETA 2 hours. Hold the line." Shaw felt something in his chest that he had not expected to feel. Hope, real hope. "How many ships?" he asked. Price's voice came back and he could hear the emotion in it. "At last count, 63 warships and counting. More are on the way. The whole fleet is coming, Daniel. We're all coming." Shaw closed his eyes for just a moment. When he opened them again, he looked at his crew. They were battered, exhausted, barely standing, but they were looking at him with something new in their eyes. "You heard the Admiral," he said. 2 more hours. We've held for 18. 2 more is nothing." Around him, his surviving crew found the strength to cheer. It was a ragged sound, weak and broken, but it was real. On his flagship, High Warlord N did not know about the human fleet racing toward him, but he knew something was wrong. The lone cruiser should have died hours ago. Its captain should have surrendered or fled. Instead, it kept fighting, kept hurting his forces, kept refusing to break. "What is wrong with these creatures?" he demanded. Sub-Warlord had no answer, but he was beginning to understand something that his commander did not. The humans were not fighting for territory or resources. They were not fighting for power or glory. They were fighting for something else entirely, something the Dominion had never considered worth dying for. They were fighting for gratitude, for honor, for a debt 200 years old. And if one ship would fight like this, wondered, What would happen when more ships arrived? On Sanctuary below, Elder stood on a hill overlooking the main settlement. The sky above was bright with battle, flashes of light marking the deaths of ships and crews far above. For 18 hours, something had held back the invasion. For 18 hours, the Dominion had not landed. Elder asked, standing beside him, "Why are they fighting for us? We have nothing to give them." Looked at the young one with ancient eyes. 200 years ago, we gave them something precious. We gave them kindness when they needed it most. We gave them their lives back. He turned back to the sky, and it seems that humans never forget. As he watched, new lights appeared in the sky. Many lights, too many to count. They were not the lights of battle. They were the lights of ships arriving, ship after ship dropping out of hyperspace, filling the void with human steel and human rage and human gratitude. The call had been answered. Humanity was coming. The Third Fleet arrived like thunder from the void. 28 warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their weapons hot, their shields raised. But they were not alone. Behind them came ships from the Fifth Fleet and the Seventh. Behind those came volunteer vessels crewed by veterans and civilians who had refused to watch from safety. Behind those came ships from other species who had chosen this moment to stand with humanity. In the end, more than 100 ships filled the space around Sanctuary. High Warlord N stared at his tactical display in disbelief. Hours ago, he had faced one broken cruiser. Now he faced an armada. Human ships kept arriving, more and more of them, as if the entire species had decided to come to this one small world. "Where are they all coming from?" he demanded. Sub-Warlord checked his readings. Everywhere, High Warlord, ships from all sectors of human space. Some of them have pushed their drives beyond safe limits to get here faster. He paused. They are damaging their own vessels just to arrive sooner. N could not understand it. The world had no strategic value. It had no rare minerals, no military importance, no tactical advantage. The Dominion had conquered 100 worlds more valuable. Why would the humans risk so much for this one? Admiral Price opened a channel to the Dominion fleet. Her voice was calm and steady. "This is Admiral Price of the Terran Collective. They are under human protection. You will withdraw your forces immediately, or you will be destroyed." N's anger burned hot. "You threaten us. The Dominion has conquered empires. We have burned worlds. You do not frighten us." Price's response was simple. "Then let us show you what frightens you." The human fleet advanced. The battle that followed was unlike anything the Dominion had ever experienced. Human ships fought with a fury that explanation. They did not care about losses. They did not care about odds. They attacked with such ferocity that Dominion crews began to panic, unable to understand why their enemy was so willing to die. On the crippled Relentless, Commander Shaw watched the battle from his ruined ship. He had done his part. He had held the line for 18 hours. He had given humanity time to respond. Now, all he could do was watch as his species kept the promise he had made. Lieutenant Amy Grant stood beside him. Her arm was in a sling now, and exhaustion lined her face, but she was smiling. "Look at them," she said softly. "They came, they all came." Shaw nodded. "Did you doubt they would?" Grant was quiet for a moment. "I hoped, but hopping is different from knowing." She looked at her commander. "You knew, didn't you? When you gave the order to come here alone, you knew they would follow." Shaw shook his head slowly. "No, I hoped. That's all any of us can do. We hope that when the moment comes, people will remember who they want to be." He gestured at the battle raging outside. "And sometimes they remember." The Dominion fleet began to crack. One by one, their ships fell to human weapons. N ordered attacks that were met with devastating counterstrikes. He tried to rally his forces, but they were fighting an enemy that simply would not stop. When 3 more human battle groups dropped out of hyperspace, ships that had traveled impossible distances in hours by pushing their engines past every safety limit, N finally understood the truth. He was not fighting an enemy. He was fighting an idea, and ideas could not be killed. High Warlord said quietly, "We must withdraw. We have lost half our fleet. If we stay, we lose everything." N turned on him with fury. "The Dominion does not retreat. The Dominion does not surrender. We are conquerors." "We were conquerors," replied. "Today we are survivors if we are lucky." He pointed at the tactical display. "They are not stopping. More ships keep coming. If we do not leave now, none of us will leave at all." Admiral Price sent another transmission. "High Warlord N, this is your final warning. Surrender your fleet and your crews will be treated with honor. Continue fighting, and we will ensure that the Dominion learns the true cost of threatening those under humanity's protection." N stared at the human admiral's image on his screen. He thought about the battles his species had fought over thousands of years. He thought about the empires they had crushed and the worlds they had taken. He thought about the pride of the Dominion, unbroken for generations. Then he looked at the tactical display, at the human ships still arriving, at his own fleet burning around him. For the first time in his life, High Warlord N spoke the words his species had never spoken. "We surrender." On Sanctuary below, Elder watched as the lights in the sky changed. The flashes of battle slowed, then stopped. The dark shapes of enemy ships began to drift, their weapons silent, their engines dead. Around him, they stared upward in wonder. They had expected death. They had expected the end of everything they knew. Instead, they saw victory. "They won," whispered. "The humans won." Felt tears flowing down his old face. "Yes," he said, "they won." He looked at the young around him. "And now you understand why kindness is never wasted. 200 years ago, we gave them our help when they needed it. Today, they gave us our lives. This is what it means to be part of something larger than yourself." On the wreck of the Relentless, evacuation shuttles were docking to take the surviving crew to safety. Medics rushed aboard to treat the wounded. Engineers came to assess the damage to the ship that had held the line. Commander Shaw refused to leave. "Sir," Dr. Maria Santos said firmly, "you need medical attention. You've been bleeding for hours. You've probably broken 3 ribs. You need to come with me." Shaw shook his head. "This ship held the line, Doctor. I will not abandon her now." He looked around at the ruined bridge, at the scorched metal and broken screens. "She deserves better than that." Grant stayed with him. So did Cole, the old engineer who had kept the ship running through 18 hours of hell. They stood together on the dying vessel and watched through damaged viewports as the Dominion flagship lowered its weapons and sent the signal of surrender. Shaw activated the ship-wide communication system one last time. His voice was weak, tired but clear. "All hands, this is the commander. We did it. The line held. The Dominion has surrendered. They are safe." He paused, gathering his strength. "To everyone who stood with me, to everyone who fought and bled and died on this ship, the debt is paid. We kept our promise." Then Daniel Shaw, commander of the heavy cruiser Relentless, hero of the Battle of Sanctuary, finally allowed himself to collapse. As Dr. Santos rushed to his side and medics carried him to the shuttle, Amy Grant stood alone on the bridge. She looked out at the stars, at the human fleet that had come to answer the call, at the world below that would live because one man had remembered an old kindness. She understood now what it meant to be human. It was not about strength or power or intelligence. It was about memory. It was about gratitude. It was about the simple truth that kindness, once given, was never forgotten. And sometimes, when the moment demanded it, that memory could shake the very stars. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Sanctuary, and the galaxy had changed. The Dominion, humiliated by their defeat, faced rebellion on a dozen worlds. Species they had conquered saw weakness where there had once been strength. The empire that had burned stars was crumbling from within, brought low not by a greater military force, but by the simple fact that they had chosen the wrong enemy. Other aggressive powers watched and learned. They looked at their maps and saw worlds they had planned to conquer. Small, weak worlds with no military value. Worlds inhabited by species who had once done kindness to humans. Quietly, those plans were put aside. The risk was too great. The humans remembered too much. And across civilized space, the story of thee and the humans became legend. Daniel Shaw stood on the surface of Sanctuary, breathing air that smelled of water and growing things. He had healed from his wounds, mostly. The doctors said the scars would fade with time, but he was not sure he wanted them to. They were reminders of what he and his crew had done. He wore a new uniform now, with new insignia on his shoulders. The Terran Collective had not court-martialed him. They had promoted him to admiral instead. Public opinion had made any other choice impossible. Daniel Shaw was a hero, whether he wanted to be or not. Elder walked beside him on the path that led to the Great Lake. The old moved slowly, his body worn by age and by the stress of the invasion, but his eyes were bright with joy. Admiral Shaw said, "I cannot find words to thank you. My language does not have words big enough." Shaw shook his head. "No thanks are needed, Elder. We were paying a debt. Your people saved 3,000 of ours when you had no reason to help. We simply returned the favor." Stopped walking and looked at the human with his ancient eyes. But that was 200 years ago. No one alive today was on those ships. No one alive today made that choice. You could have forgotten. It would have been easy to forget. "We don't forget," Shaw said simply. "That is who we are. We remember kindness. We remember debts. We remember those who helped us when we were weak." He looked out at the lake, its surface reflecting the light of the dying red sun. "And we remember those who hurt us too. The galaxy is learning that about us now." Was quiet for a moment. Then he asked the question that had been on his mind for months. "When you gave the order, when you took your one ship against 47, did you know that others would come?" Shaw took a long breath. "No, I hoped, but I did not know." He turned to face the elder. "But even if no one had come, I would have done the same thing, because some debts are worth dying for. Some promises must be kept, no matter the cost. That is what we teach our children. That is what we believe." Nodded slowly. "And now the galaxy knows this about you. They know that you remember. They know that you keep your promises." He smiled, the expression strange on his wide face. "I think some of them are very afraid." "Good," Shaw said. "They should be." Far away in the prison wing of a human station, High Warlord N sat alone in his cell. He was treated well, as Admiral Price had promised. The humans brought him food and water and did not harm him. But he was a prisoner, the first High Warlord of the Dominion ever to surrender. He spent his days thinking about what had happened. He had commanded armies. He had conquered worlds. He had believed that strength was the only thing that mattered in the universe. The humans had shown him something different. They had shown him that memory could be a weapon, that gratitude could be a force stronger than fleets, that a debt, carried for 200 years, could bring an empire to its knees. He wondered how many other debts humanity remembered. He wondered how many other species had been kind to humans in the past. He wondered if, somewhere in the galaxy, there were species that had been cruel to humans and were now waiting, unknowing, for the day when that cruelty would be repaid. The thought did not comfort him. On Earth, Amy Grant received command of her own ship. They named it the Remembrance, and she understood the weight of that name. Her first mission was to visit worlds where humans had received help in the past, to make contact, to remind them that they were not forgotten. "You are ambassadors now," Admiral Price told her crew. "Ambassadors of memory. You will show the galaxy that humanity keeps its promises for good or for ill. Be worthy of that responsibility." Grant stood on her new bridge and thought about the lessons she had learned aboard the Relentless. She thought about Commander Shaw, bleeding on the deck but refusing to give up. She thought about Cole, keeping the engines running through impossible odds. She thought about Dr. Santos, saving lives while the ship burned around her. She understood now what it meant to be human among the stars. It meant remembering. It meant caring. It meant paying back kindness with kindness and cruelty with justice. 50 years later, a new generation of children sat in a learning circle on Sanctuary. The world was safe now, protected by treaties and alliances that had grown from the Battle of Sanctuary. They had become close friends of humanity, partners in exploration and trade, and the quiet work of building peace. An old elder sat before them. She had been young once, a child named who had asked questions about humans and kindness. Now she was the keeper of the old stories, and she told them with pride. Long ago, she began, our people found a ship full of strangers dying in the darkness between stars. We saved them because it was right, because kindness needs no payment. We asked for nothing in return. The children listened with wide eyes. 200 years later, continued, an army came to destroy us. They had many ships and we had none. We thought we would die. We thought our world would burn. She paused, letting the moment stretch. But then a single human ship appeared. One ship against an armada. The captain said that he had come to pay a debt. He said that humans never forget kindness. She told them about the battle, about the 18 hours of desperate fighting, about the fleet that came to answer the call. She told them about Admiral Shaw, who had refused to leave his dying ship. She told them about the surrender of the Dominion, the first surrender in their long history. This is why we are never alone, said, because kindness once given echoes through time, because some species, when shown kindness, will shake the very stars to repay it. She looked at each young face in turn. Remember this story. Remember what it teaches. Be kind because you never know what seeds you are planting. Be grateful because debts must always be paid. And never forget that in this vast galaxy, there is a species that remembers everything and forgives nothing. The children nodded, their young minds filled with wonder. In orbit above Sanctuary, a memorial floated in the eternal darkness. It was a recreation of the relentless, preserved exactly as she had been at the end of the battle, scorched and broken but undefeated. Human and pilgrims came to see it, to touch the cold metal, to remember what had been done here. A young human officer walked through its empty corridors. Her name was Shaw, and her great-grandfather had commanded this ship. She wore her uniform with pride, knowing the weight of the name she carried. She found the plaque at the center of the memorial, the words engraved in both human script and symbols. She read them slowly, letting each one settle in her heart. They asked for nothing in return. We gave everything we had. This is what it means to be human. Touched the cold metal and made a quiet promise. She would be worthy of this legacy. She would remember kindness. She would honor debts. She would never forget those who had helped her people, and she would never forgive those who had harmed them. Because that was what it meant to be human. And mankind never overlooks a favor. Their gratitude can build worlds, and their retribution can shake them. The end.